Woohoo! Welcome to Conversations with Beth, where curiosity meets connection. I'm Beth Lees. I'm a lifelong spiritual explorer, a passionista, and a lover of deep, meaningful conversations. This podcast is all about getting to know fabulous people doing amazing things in this world in a fun and intimate way through interesting questions that spark laughter, insight, and those holy shift moments that change everything. So get comfy, open your heart, and let's dive into some real soulful conversation. Today on Shifts and Giggles, I'm super excited to welcome a truly luminous and grounded soul, Deana Paqua. Deana's a gifted and wise teacher, healer, and guide who has spent beaucoup years, like, I don't know, 25 years, walking the path of holistic healing and spiritual exploration. Through her work, Deana blends ancient wisdom with modern sensibility, offering cross-cultural energy medicine, contemporary shamanism, Reiki, tarot, flower essence work, intuitive insight, and a lot more. What I love most about Deana is her ability to hold space in a way that's both deeply sacred and refreshingly real. She brings her whole self, decades of study, life experience, compassion, and yes, even the occasional well-placed F-bomb to help people heal, grow, and step into their soul's purpose. Her clients and students describe her as down to earth, practical, and profoundly supportive, a true spiritual midwife for transformation. Deana also shares her knowledge in the academic world as a professor at Western Connecticut State University, where she teaches about mind-body healing and cross-cultural approaches to health and serves on the advisory board for the Institute of Holistic Health Studies. Whether you're a fellow healing arts practitioner, a sensitive soul navigating deep transformation, or someone who's just curious about the mystical side of healing, you're going to find lots of wisdom, laughter, and heart in this conversation. So settle in, open your heart, get ready to embody the sacred with the amazing Deana Paqua. Woohoo! Welcome, Miss
Woohoo!
Deana. Um, I've known you for almost 30 years, right?
Almost, almost. Yep.
Almost. So tell me, if you can, do you have a very first holy shift moment that set you on the path of healing?
Well, I think, and what I usually, when I tell my story, it really came out of honestly profound desperation and pain. Okay. I mean, I think like a lot of kids and people, I was really sensitive, energy sensitive, empathic, all those things. So many of us are the same. And I sensed and saw spirits from when I was very young, didn't really understand what that was. And I do think that's very common. But for me, like the things that really were crucial to pushing me on this path, I had cancer when I was a senior in college.
That's huge.
That was scary, right? You feel like you're indestructible at that age. So it was really shocking. I always dealt with anxiety. I was really shy as a kid, which I know is hard to believe now.
I know, very
But
hard.
but I was very shy. I was very timid. I had selective mutism, which I didn't even know about, but it described how I operated. I just was really overwhelmed by what I was feeling all the time. Didn't know how to navigate that. So I had a lot of anxiety. So anxiety and then the cancer, and that kind of pushed it into obsessive compulsive disorder. And that was like almost a 10-year endeavor. And it was
Wow.
really a lot of suffering on my end. And I went the whole conventional route. I was seeing a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I tried medication, and it, for whatever reason, did not work for me. And I would have gladly taken a medication if it had helped, but for whatever reason, it just didn't. And I was really desperate. It also led me sort of in this downturn of depression.
I'm sure.
And on the same it was like I was living a double life because on the outside, I was in the corporate world, I was very successful. I was moving along in my career. I was a graphic designer and being an artist and a writer. Like this really resonated with me, except I knew I didn't belong in the corporate world. And I knew I was meant to be on a path of service. I just didn't know what that
Where?
was. And I kept getting, sort of derailed. So I was doing that and I was still doing well. And meanwhile, I was suffering profoundly with this OCD. And it led me to trying holistic and natural forms of healing because I wasn't getting any results from Western medicine. So that's when I looked into meditation, yoga before there were Lululemon yoga pants and yoga studios, right? There were only blue sticky mats, and the church basement was where we did yoga. So that was a while ago. And so that kind of started me in that direction. I went to see a nutritionist, a naturopath. I started trying flower essences. I started, meditating. I was always very spiritual. I grew up Catholic,
Catholic?
went through all the various levels of initiation in the church, my confirmation and all that. And I sang in the church for years. So I was like really into my, religious system that I was raised in. But I was also open-minded to other perspectives. I studied world religions in college, so that opened my mind. I really saw what was the same and similar about all these various spiritual paths. So I was not like judgmental against any other practices. So that gave me an open mind. Plus, we traveled a lot when I was young, so that also like opened me up to different
That's huge.
cultures. Grew up in Norwalk, which is beautifully diverse, and so I always felt at home in sort of this global environment. So all of that influenced my journey. So navigating the OCD, the holistic practices, I started to feel better. So I realized, okay, there's
There's
something
something
to
here,
this.
right?
And then one of the big sort of aha moments through that process, coming back to like spiritual practice, I was so desperate at one point, I dug out my rosary beads, which I hadn't prayed
Wow.
in years. And I took them out and I was just like, I started praying to Mother Mary, who I felt a connection to. And I just said to her, you have to tell me if everything's going to be okay. And so I had this set of rosary beads. I have two sets that are similar. They were my grandmother's. One
Oh,
had blue beads, one had white beads, and the one with the blue beads was the one I was praying with. And all of a sudden, when I finished, I looked down and the chain link of the rosary changed from silver to gold. It
wow.
like alchemized in my hands. And I was so shocked. I ran downstairs to show my mother. And I had been reading about like this is one of her miracles. Like it's written up in books. I never
Wow.
imagined in a million years that it would happen to me. And I could feel this like wave of energy in my hand and like this feeling of unconditional love. And it really gave me the faith that spirit is real and tangible, not just something removed and out there.
Right.
So that, so I'm navigating this anxiety OCD situation. I'm still in the corporate world. And then at the age of 30, I got into a near fatal car accident. And that was the big catalyst. So it was like the universe was like, she's not listening. You need to really wake her up because I was resisting that path of service to, be in the corporate world, make a lot of money. I had a, prestigious position and staff and all this stuff really fed my ego. But I knew that's not where I was supposed to be. Plus, I was still challenged with my own healing process. So the universe was like, okay, we're going to just like blast her now. So I get into this car accident. I was hit head on at an impact speed of 85 miles an hour,
Yikes.
shattered both of my femurs, broke my rib cage, and broke ribs, collapsed both lungs, lacerated my liver, hit my face on the steering wheel of my car. And I was actually hit like three times from car behind me, in front of, like it was really bad. And
Wow.
I hit a stone wall. So it was like, let's just do that for just a little extra sauce with hitting the stone wall, because it's not enough. So I stopped breathing. That was really, and I lost a tremendous amount of blood. A lot of this was like realization afterwards, but when I was in the car, I was like trying to breathe, nothing's happening. I knew it was going to take a while for the EMTs to get to me because I was on a back road, and sure enough, it took like half an hour.
Wow, that's a long time when you're
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens
not breathing.
when you're not breathing, right? And I thought I didn't really have any kind of medical training at the time, but I was like, I don't think you can live very long if you can't breathe.
Wow.
I knew I didn't have much time, and I really felt like if I wanted to go, that I was given a choice.
Right.
And my former husband had lost his best friend the year before to cancer, so I was like, he can't lose, his two closest people like that. And then my parents, I'm the only child, they would never survive. So I was like, okay. And then I knew that I was not doing the work that my soul came onto this planet to do. And I was like, okay, I don't want to go. I don't want to go yet. So I just said, all right, God, you have to help me because I can't do this by myself. Like, this
Wow.
is what I prayed. As soon as I said that prayer, now nothing was happening before that. I said the prayer, all of a sudden something happened and I started to breathe.
Wow. How powerful.
And I felt like this bubble of energy. I didn't know what that was. And that I knew I was being protected. It was like I was held in this state of divine grace and unconditional love, like what I felt when I prayed the rosary with Mother Mary.
Right.
I felt that energy come in. And I was like, all right, I have help here now. I was praying to angels before that. So I had like a connection to my angels. So I knew that I was being somehow supported and protected.
Did you
And I
feel
also
like it was out, you were out of body?
no, like it was, I felt like I was in between worlds because I was still in my body. I was forcing myself to stay conscious because I had to breathe, like I had to breathe.
Right. You had to consciously
I
breathe.
had to consciously breathe because I couldn't just breathe on my own at that
Right.
point. So I knew I had to stay awake. So I was in this, I didn't fully leave my body. I was like in this in-between place, which is very shamanistic.
Yeah.
So, and I knew I had all the spiritual support. So I knew that no matter what happened, that I was going to be okay. So that's my long answer to the to
You
that
had an inner
question.
knowing. You had an inner knowing, right?
I had an inner knowing, and that was like the really big catalyst for me to change. I mean, obviously, I had to heal from that first and go through a lot of surgeries and was in the hospital and ICU and all of that. But as soon as and they told me they weren't sure if I would be able to walk again, and I was like, I'm walking.
I'll be walking.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
walking. So I walked within 6 weeks, which they said, was probably not going to be possible. And I did it. And I felt like I had this miraculous, even though it was really hard, I had this miraculous spiritual support. Plus, I had a lot of people praying for me, so
And did you feel like you had that kind of support before the accident?
once I had that experience with Mother Mary, that was really the pivotal point where her presence really became physically tangible to me, that I
Mhm.
was like, Spirit is right here. And I knew that she was there and that I had backup, like I had support, and that I wasn't going through this alone. Somebody said to me once, "Oh, it was so easy for you to change your life because you had your parents." And I'm like,
No.
have you ever met Catholic Italian parents? They would never have chosen this path for me. Not in a
Right.
million years. They would have been like, stay in the corporate world, make your regular salary, don't get hurt and almost die, don't get divorced, don't change your career. Like they would have been like, follow this set path, a very
Right.
linear path. So, it was the spiritual support. And that was what really when I knew I had that, I had a lot more faith and confidence that I could heal and move forward.
So how did you heal yourself from that traumatic injury?
So when I was getting ready to leave the hospital, and they did an amazing job. I mean, I would be dead without Western medicine. So I just want to say that. And I had great doctors, amazing care. I had really good insurance and white privilege, so we can't discount that. But I had amazing, doctors. They did an incredible job. But I knew that I was going to need more than Western medicine to heal. And I had that foundation from working through my anxiety and OCD. So when I left, they gave me a prescription for pain medication and physical therapy. And I was like, you really think that's going to be enough for that, what I
Level
just
of trauma.
went through? Like, really? So I knew, and I refused to take the pain medication, which was probably dumb. I think there's a
In
balance there.
hindsight.
I think there's a balance. But I did find, like working with a naturopath, some herbal remedies that really helped with pain. So that was good. But yeah, I kind of put in place my own holistic healthcare program. And thankfully, from my corporate salary, I was able to do that and my good insurance at the time. So I had a nutritionist, an herbalist I worked with. Once I could drive, I started seeing a chiropractor because I had torn most of the ligaments in my neck and I had really bad whiplash, which wasn't diagnosed in the hospital because it wasn't life-threatening. So I started seeing him and then massage therapy. And then a year later was when I met the beautiful Beth. So I was doing, all these different
A lot
things.
of
I started
things.
doing some yoga, all the things that I could find to try to help myself heal. I saw a body-centered, trauma-informed therapist to move through some of the PTSD, which, is ongoing because your body stores all of that
Yeah.
information, as you know very well. So then a year after the accident, I had already gone through a few rounds of surgery. I was walking, but I still had metal in both femurs and I still had pain and stiffness. So I knew that there was more healing to do. And various people were saying to me, you should try energy work. You've been through trauma, you should try energy work. And I was like, what's energy work? Like I didn't know what that was. And I was open to it. I mean, heck yeah, I'll try it. So I was at the TLC Center and I was working with a movement therapist there. It was right back when I think you had first opened, or you
Open
were
the
only,
center. Yeah.
yeah, for maybe a year or so. And I was like, well, maybe, TLC has somebody I could work with. And I was looking through all the flyers and brochures that you had there. And I still remember what your brochure looked like. I still remember the paper. Maybe that's my design geek coming out. And I remember looking at it and it talked about Reiki and it was like you could learn, the first level in a day. It would help with pain and stress. That's all I needed to know. So I didn't know anything else about it. I hadn't met you. And I was just like, I'm doing this. So I took your class, as you know, and I had really no idea like what energy healing was, but I just knew that I had to do it. So took your first level class and really profound stuff happened almost immediately. It was almost like the universe was like, again, clanging me over the head and going, we want her to know this is real and this is really significant. So for 3 weeks, the energy centers, the chakras in my palms pulsed
Wow.
almost nonstop. So I'm like on the computer at work going, what the hell is going on? Like they were like, I was like, that is really bizarre. Then one of the things that was really that had stayed with me from the accident was I had numbness in both feet and in my right knee from, my from the head on and my knees hitting
The
the
impact.
dashboard and breaking my legs and all that stuff. So I had numbness in my right knee and numbness in both feet. At the end of that class, all the feeling came back in my feet
Wow. That fast.
that fast. And then one more thing happened that was really mind-boggling to me. So one of the things I love about Reiki is learning to do the self-treatments, right? It's like it's
Huge.
so empowering that you could do this on yourself after one class and really having no background that you could do this for yourself. So I'm like sitting there doing my self-treatments and I was just so happy with how relaxed I felt. if that had been it, I would have been more than happy. So it was so helpful with the stress. I also noticed my pain levels going down
Wow.
from doing the self-treatments. But about 5 days into it, again, it's like 5 days after the first class, I was working over my left hip. And all of a sudden, I felt this pulsing deep inside the hip, and it was like boo, 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 boo. And then it went boom. Now, I didn't have the language of like energy blockages or anything like that back
Right.
then. It was so big and pulsy. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, it was so fascinating to me just to be able to feel something like that. So I get up off my couch and I was like, oh my God, my limp was gone. I had a limp on my left side.
Wow.
And I was like, holy moly. I was so fascinated. I kept trying to see if it would come back. I was going up and down the stairs and walking around, and it didn't. And it was so significant when I went into work. People noticed the difference.
Wow.
And when I went to see my chiropractor, who I was seeing every week, he was like, what did you do? And I said, well, I learned this thing called Reiki. And back then, not that many
Not
people knew
no.
about it or knew what it was or anything. And I was just like, holy moly. And that was really the biggest catalyst for me to change my career.
It was a holy shift
It
moment.
was the big holy shift moment with the beautiful Beth. So then, I had to keep learning Reiki. And so I went on and I studied all the levels, and I wanted to at least get to the level 3 before my last surgery. So I was able to do that. And then, just continue studying to get my Reiki master training. And then I've gone back and studied, Reiki, like we keep learning.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get ready for that last surgery, and that was really amazing because I'd already been through, two major surgeries on my legs already. So this was the third one to take the rods out, which they don't always do, but because I was young enough, they wanted to take them out, and they were also painful.
I bet.
And, your body starts calcifying around the metal. So they were like, let's get these out. So I was ready, and I had people sending Reiki to me. I sent it. I did my distance healing, got all ready for the surgery. And when I came through it the next day, the PA came in and he's like, did you know that you only needed aspirin last night as a pain medication?
Wow.
And I was like, really? I didn't even know like what they gave me. And he's like, yeah. And he said, we had to re-break your left leg to get the rod out because you had calcified over the top of the rod. And I was like, holy moly. And then I had two incisions on the right side, which they're about this long, and it goes all the way through the tissue to get to the femur.
Wow.
And because I had a bone chip. So for them to get the rod out and the bone chip out, they had to go in 2 times. So I had two big incisions on the right side. So I was like, wow. And then the nurse came in to change my bandages, and I noticed, because I've been through this already, there was barely any drainage, and it looked like the incisions had already sealed the next morning.
Wow.
I went back to get the staples out 10 days later, and the nurse said to me, when did you have your surgery? I said, 10 days ago. She said, I have never seen incisions heal this quickly. And I was
Oh,
like,
awesome.
so that was it. It was like the universe is like, we need to make sure she gets it.
Do you get this, Dina?
She gets it. So that was it. Like I tried to stay in the corporate world. It wasn't working. I knew that's not where I was destined to be. And that kind of laid the groundwork for me to begin my journey as a healing practitioner.
And then you went to massage school, right?
I went to massage therapy school, which I loved. So I was like working with a combination of Reiki and massage, which we know works beautifully together. And then I started teaching Reiki and started teaching my own classes. And teaching was really sort of blew the doors off. I really felt like I am now really aligned with my soul's purpose. And then about a year into my practice, and I was still like learning different types of energy healing because I was just so fascinated by how gentle it could be, but how deep the healing can be.
Right.
And I just wanted to keep learning. And you and I did some IET training together,
Yeah,
which
we
was
did
really
IET
fun.
together.
So while I was at work one day, I was just in the office and I was like, I think I need to work with a shaman. And I didn't even know what that meant in our contemporary culture. But it just like popped into my head, right? That divine guidance. And then within a month, one was on the doorstep of where I was working. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then we just started doing work together. So, he would give me shamanic healing sessions and I would give him massage. So that wonderful like barter
Yeah, how beautiful.
connection, right? And I wasn't even thinking in a million years that that would be something that I would ever be doing. It just was something I needed for my own healing because it also was like it was addressing other pieces of the puzzle in the healing
Right.
process, like soul retrieval, which was so critical, for from having gone through so much trauma. And also like extracting more complex energies. And these were things that always kind of came to me, but I didn't really know what to do with. They started showing up in my sessions. I also started seeing things around people and in their energy. And my intuitive abilities were opening up, but I wasn't really saying anything because I had a more clinical practice and I was working in doctor's offices and in the hospital and people would ask me, well, don't you get messages? And I was like, go see a psychic. Like I didn't want to get into any of that. But then, working with the shamanic healer, it kind of started opening up that more.
That's so fascinating. So that you went from corporate to more clinical practice in your massage therapy and energy healing session, and then you dove off into the deep end of the spiritual world, right?
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't something I wanted or asked for. I was working with shamanic healing for myself, and then I had my natal chart read by this amazing woman, Vicky Noble, who created the Mother Peace Tarot deck,
Oh, right.
which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah. It's a
So
great
she
deck.
read my chart and she was like, I said, I feel like there's something missing in my healing work and I can't quite put my finger on it. And she's like, all right, well, let's look at your chart. And she looked at everything and she said, you're really called to the healing path, the shamanic path in this life. And I was like, what?
What's that?
And I said, well, that sounds scary and like a lot of responsibility. And then also this deep connection with Mother Earth, right? And I was like, I don't even know what that looks like. And so I just said, but something about it rang, like struck a chord. So as I was leaving that reading, I just said to the universe, to the creator, I just said, if this is what you want me to do, you are going to have to show me because I don't know what that looks like for me in today's culture.
Right.
Like, what is that? And then all of a sudden, it was like I just had to open the door, and all of these indigenous elders just kind of started showing up locally. I mean, I'm sure they already were. I just wasn't tuned into it.
Right.
But I just started meeting and working pretty closely with Native American elders from different cultures like Cherokee. I worked with a Lakota elder. Um, I have a Mohegan teacher that I work with nearby. And then in the South American traditions, the Peruvian Andes and Ecuadorian Andes. And I started meeting and working with them. And then I met a teacher from Tibet, a Tibetan Lama, who was very shamanistic. So it was like the universe just said, okay, she said, okay, here we go. So they lined up all of these opportunities for me, which still kind of blows my mind. And so that was really pretty awe-inspiring. And I still remember feeling self-conscious and afraid to put that out there. It took me a long
Yeah,
time.
it's huge because a lot of people, I mean, I think probably even today don't know what shamanic healing is necessarily. Um,
Right.
so what is shamanic healing? And because I know a little bit about it. I mean, I've had experiences of it, but I don't think most people have. Like a lot of people have heard of energy healing, but I don't think a lot of people have heard of shamanic healing or know exactly what that is. And I find that a lot of people call themselves shamans when that just freaks me out because I feel like it's a reverential, you don't just call yourself a shaman. So, can you speak to that a little bit for me?
Oh, I'm more than happy to. Yeah. So, well, when when systems like this get westernized, a lot of things can get lost in translation. But okay, so I'll talk about the history a little bit and then what is contemporary shamanism and how can we work with it today. So the history. So probably like 50, 80 years ago, anthropologists and researchers were looking to connect with traditional healers, traditional medicine people. So groups of researchers discovered traditional shamans, and their titles. Shaman comes from the title Saman, which is from the Evenki tribal region of Siberia, and similar practitioners in the Buryat region, and Mongolia. So they have similar cultural consistencies and rituals and practices that are very similar throughout that region. So the title Saman or shaman is an individual that's been called to this specific healing path by their ancestors. So they're called by ancestral spirits or a powerful nature spirit. And they go through some great trial, like some illness, physical or mental illness, or some accident, something really severe. And they need the help of spirit to heal. So the conventional, their own medicine, herbal remedies, or whatever is not enough. They won't heal from just that. They need the spiritual intervention. And then they need to surrender to this calling. So it's a calling by the spirits. And if they try to say no, they could actually die. Like it's really
Wow.
a very difficult path. The people in these cultures don't view it as something to aspire to. They view it as more of a curse because it's so difficult.
Right.
So then they surrender to this path. Usually there are some other elders that have elder shamans that are there that can help them, or they just do their training, with the spirit world, and they become this specific type of healer, which they go into a trance state, they go into an altered state of consciousness, and they engage with the spirit world in the spirit world. So it's that altered state of consciousness, and then they have specific rituals, offerings, ceremonies that they facilitate that are specific to that cultural area. Now, there are other healers, other traditional healers that might do their work in a similar way, like the Sangoma in Africa. They're also called by the ancestors. They also go into a trance. They also go into the spirit world. So it is very shamanistic. And these practices exist in other areas. It's not as widespread as people think, but it is global. There are areas like in the Amazon where the healers go into trance with supportive plant medicine.
Right.
Now, Eastern regions, they don't go into trance with plants. They do it through drumming and other practices, but it's a different way of working with the spirit world. Now, most traditional cultures, as you know, blend healing and connect healing to mind, body, and spirit. And the spiritual is often viewed as the foundation of healing, regardless of the culture. There's also this foundation of animism, which a lot of people think is shamanism, but it's really animism, which is the belief that everything is alive and is connected to spirit. Like we're one giant internet. We're all connected to each other, and the spiritual energy of the creator is within everyone and everything, every animal, every plant, every tree, every person, the earth herself, the stars. It's all interconnected. So that animistic foundation is consistent throughout most traditional cultures that I've ever encountered or
Right.
studied. So shamans have that animistic foundation, but they do their work a little bit differently than other healers. So like my teachers from the Andes are more mystical. So they call the spirits to them and they stay conscious in this world and do their work. One's not better than the other.
It's just different.
It's just different. And I think it just sounds more exotic when you say shaman. So that title shaman is given by the community. The practitioners don't call themselves that. It's a title of honor given by the community. And again, it's not something anybody aspires to. You don't take a weekend workshop and become a shaman. It's literally decades.
Right.
Whether you're talking about the traditional shamans from Siberia or you're talking about my teachers who are mystics, energetic mystics in the Andes, my teacher, Don Mariano, worked as a healer for 65 years before he felt called to go out and teach others.
Wow.
So there's that whole piece. So then there were these researchers who went out to study with the shamans, the saman, and the women. Their title is Udugan, which is actually an older title, just saying.
I love that.
So they have a different title. So there were researchers, one of them, Dr. Michael Harner, who went out to study with these traditional shamans, and he wondered if there was something from their practice that he could adapt to teach to a wider range of audience, wider range of people, and even Westerners, where we could learn to connect with our own spirit guides and own spirit helpers. And so that's where core shamanism, or what I call contemporary shamanism, comes in. Okay. And I studied with my teacher, Gail Gorelick, and some other teachers,
And that's where Sandra Ingerman.
where Sandra Ingerman trained, and I've studied, some of her courses. So that's core shamanism, and it's a practice of going into an altered state of consciousness and learning to connect with your own spirit guides. And what's great about it is that the majority of people can learn to do this on a certain level,
Right.
right? It's kind of like art. I grew up in a family of artists. I believe everyone can be an artist, but we're not all Michelangelo or
Not
Leonardo.
everyone's called to be an artist.
Right. So it's kind of the same thing. Like we can all meditate, right? But not everybody's going to be the Tibetan monk who can sit on the side of Mount Everest. I'm making, just exaggerating a little bit, and can control their body temperature in sub-zero
Right, exactly.
weather, right? But we can all learn to meditate. So it's like that. It's the humility. This path really is about humility because you're not really doing the work.
Well,
The job of
exactly. Which,
yeah, our job as a shamanic practitioner is to take the time, energy, and dedication to build the relationships with these spirits so that they can do the work.
yeah, well, one of the questions I was going to ask you was what's the difference between being a healer and being a channel for healing?
Right. Well, it's like I kind of see it as like a healing facilitator, right? So we can be healing facilitators. It's really the client that does the healing. And then we can be a channel or a conduit for various types of healing energy if that's something that we're meant to do,
Right.
right? Like the Reiki energy, like angelic energy that we work with in IET, the shamanic, contemporary shamanic connections, and that can vary from practitioners. So I might have a really strong connection to ancestral helpers, to various deities or an angel or archangel, and then someone else could be working with plant spirits really strongly. So it can vary, and that's another thing that I love about it is that in Western culture we have, we've kind of become, unless you were really raised with strong ties to your ancestral traditions, a lot of us are spiritual orphans in a way. We're
Mhm.
not on our ancestral lands. We're living on land that our ancestors did not come from. There are different spirits here, and it's kind of like we have to meet them with respect and also like connect. Like I'm a mutt. I have various lineages, very diverse and different races in my ancestry. And it's like to connect all of those and create wholeness is a process, right? But contemporary shamanism offers that, a way to do that. And also, like the teachings I've learned from my teachers in the Andes, is they've given us various frameworks. They want contemporary Western people to do these practices, primarily because they see what's happening with the environment and with the earth.
Yeah,
They, have given tools like creating a mesa, portable altar, to be able to connect all your various aspects of your own spirituality. They want us to work with this and make it our own.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, what what's a myth about shamanism?
What's a myth about shamanism? Um, well, I mean, I think one of them you said before is like people calling themselves shamans who don't have not been initiated by those tribes to be given that title. Um, maybe, one of the things I heard when I was first starting was that it's evil. People think that it's evil or you're doing something wrong or dark, which, has a lot of different connotations connected to the feminine or just like, racial misinformation. Because the dark is really like the feminine, it's the mystery, it's the
And it's
creative void.
rich and
Right.
powerful.
It's our shadow. It's where we need to go for the deep healing. So shamans are not good or bad. We love binaries in
We
Western culture.
certainly do.
It's so easy to just label things, right? Shamans, so the traditional shamans in Mongolia or Siberia, yeah, they might do some cursing, they might do some practices like that, or they might not. It varies. Okay. There are Catholic priests who have been paid to curse people. Okay. So, because I handle some of that stuff, it comes into my practice at times. And, you can't label someone as good or bad just by a modality that they practice.
Right.
Okay. Everybody, there's different moral perspectives and different ideologies, and there's a lot of harm that's been caused by organized religions. Wars have been fought, millions of people have died over religion and spirituality. So, labeling someone as evil or bad because they practice a specific tradition is often a massive oversimplification.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million shades of gray in between the black and the white. Let's just face it.
Right, exactly.
You are so fascinating. You just have, I love that you've come through your own healing journey, and it's a big one. It's been a huge, long healing journey. And I think that's made you a tremendous um, shamanic practitioner, energy healer.
You. Thank you.
I know you probably wouldn't call yourself an energy healer. You do energy healing work probably, but
Yeah, well, and it's like it gets trying to find the technical terms that really describe what we do is so challenging. And, the minutia of that can really get us stuck. I think the titles are really just to help people find what they need,
right,
right? And people come to me when they want a more spiritual focus on their issue that they've been struggling with. And, a lot of folks that I see are people that have been on a spiritual path for a while. I usually don't see muggles that much anymore. Usually they've been, doing some of their own work. A lot of fellow practitioners who want a deeper level of understanding of their situation from the spirit world and I help them bridge connections with their own spirit helpers and build those relationships and support them in figuring out like clarity so that they can move forward in a more focused way on their own soul's path, you
I
know?
love that.
Yeah, it really brings me a lot of joy
When
to do.
you're helping people strengthen relationships within themselves and that they have access to by themselves. You're not making them dependent on you
No, and that's something
healing.
I've never felt comfortable with, and I know you haven't either, because I want to teach people to do this work for themselves. And I do
Yeah,
understand, like, we also can't do it in isolation. We need
right,
community, and I know I need, like, I can't do it all for myself, so I
right.
need other people to go to, and even just to open yourself to receiving. So there's a balance. It's like, teaching people to open their gifts and to work on their gifts and learn how to protect and ground themselves and do their work safely. And then also, it's okay to receive
Yeah,
and allow,
exactly.
you know, us or somebody else to do some work for them or on their
Right.
behalf. So I kind of love both.
I love that balance piece. What's one
Yeah.
question that you wish that I had asked you?
That's one question. I don't know. Are there any questions that you feel like your clients or students ask a lot, like that could use some, like a shamanic perspective or a different point of view?
So you turned the question and you asked it back to me. I love how
Yes, I
you do
did.
that.
Yes, I did.
You're so sneaky. All right. So what are some of the sneaky ways that people um block their energy healing, even when
Oh,
they think they're ready?
oh, I love this. Okay. What are some ways that people, I think there's fear sometimes, right? Maybe thinking it needs to be harder and it needs to be a struggle when
Mm,
we could just allow grace, right? Sometimes that's scary because I think our culture programs us that things have to be hard and they have to be a struggle, which, fair enough. At times it really can be. But there can also be grace and letting go of control. I think that's another piece that can be really challenging. I know it has been for me when, they really just need to surrender the healing.
right.
And I tell people, like I said, I work with less skeptics today, but I teach at WestCon, so the young people definitely keep me on my toes in that. And I tell them, you don't have to believe in everything just because somebody presents it to you. You definitely need discernment, and to be skeptical is fine. But where I would suggest working around that or working with that is don't block the possibility of healing. Be open to healing, and that you don't necessarily have to know what it's going to look like or how it's going to come. Like when I came to you to learn Reiki, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was going to work. It's not like I automatically believed it was going to work or do
But
anything.
you were open.
I was open to the possibility that it could help me, and I was open to the possibility of healing. I was open to healing on a very deep level, and I was allowing the universe to kind of line up what was going to help and look at like the amazing, miraculous experiences I had and had no idea. So it's not like it's the placebo effect. I didn't know what it was. How could I
Right.
believe in it? So it's the openness and the surrender. And I think the control and the fear can be things that people may not even
Block.
realize that they're blocking, with
I
that.
love that answer. That's a beautiful answer, Dina. How can people find you?
So I have a website, embodythesacred.net. So I'm available there. I'm on Instagram under my name, Deana Paqua, and then also on Facebook under Embody the Sacred. So that's, the best way to find me is through my website.
Those are the places. I'll make sure everybody has access to that. Thank you so
Cool.
much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
I love and appreciate you.
I love you too.